A Complete Unknown is singing its way through theaters as we speak. The latest film from director James Mangold. Mangold is famous for directing Walk the Line, but does this movie live up to that one's legend, or should you get out of here, Dewey, because you don't want none of this shit? Well, stick around and I will let you know. Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Sean Morgan and I adore movies. I also adore Bob Dylan's music. So 2024's A Complete Unknown was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I have finally gotten a chance to see it in IMAX, no less. So let's get right into a discussion. A Complete Unknown, as I said, is the latest from director James Mangold. Mangold is famous for lots of movies, almost all of which I either like a fair bit or outright love. These films include Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Ford v Ferrari, Logan, The Wolverine, and of course, Walk the Line. Walk the Line about Johnny Cash is, at least to me, the template that every other musical biopic should be judged against, and the musical biopic that everyone has been copying for around 20 years now. I adore Walk the Line, but in the years since its release, the musical biopic has gotten very stale, if you ask me. The beats are almost always very similar throughout the entire genre, just with different songs piped in through the theater speakers. A Complete Unknown hits some of those tried and true tropes that are seemingly inescapable within this genre, but what saves the movie are the great performances and the sheer power of the songs of Bob Dylan. First, let us talk about performances. I think Chalamet is obviously talented, but I oftentimes find myself struggling to connect with his performances on an emotional level. I think Timothy Chalamet's work with director Luca Guadagnino, Call Me by Your Name, Bones and All, those movies, I think those movies are the ones where he delivers his best performances hands down, but he is solid in A Complete Unknown. If he had bungled this and just sounded like he was doing a bad Dylan impression the whole time, it would have been a miscast for the ages. He did his research, though, and I think he brings his A game to this performance. The entire cast is also really singing, no pun intended, including Edward Norton as Pete Seeger, my beloved Elle Fanning as Sylvie Russo. I always love her in anything. And Monica Barbaro in a revelatory turn as Joan Baez. I read somewhere that Barbaro was trained to sing specifically for this movie. She had not ever had singing lessons before, and that is an incredible achievement given how good she is throughout the course of this film. Um, the character of Bob Dylan is famously not very open. Like the public character of Dylan is not a very open person. His mystery is part of his legend. And to me, that is appropriate for somebody who basically changed folk music forever. Dylan is a folk hero himself in many ways, unknowable and unclear. And this makes for a difficult protagonist for a film, though, and it makes things feel a little awkward in certain parts of A Complete Unknown. There isn't really effort made to interrogate the interior workings of Dylan as a character, but that is intentional and by design, so your mileage may vary. Had Mangold supposed a bunch of emotional origin points for Dylan's actions that were pure fiction or drama, I think it would have felt too soapy or not in line with the public perception of Bob Dylan and what the public kind of likes about him. Um, like I said, though, this means that the audience watching the film is left to be puzzled by and stunned by Dylan, the character, as he acts like a sometimes funny and sometimes rude gremlin in between fits of creative genius. Now, I'm not saying that this decision is improper or clever, but it is certainly notable and something worth talking about when you try to dissect this film, as it is kind of becoming a very significant awards contender this year. The film also tries to make tension from a situation that most music fans, not even die-hard music nerds, know about. That being whether or not Bob Dylan will start dabbling, excuse me, with electric instruments. And most audience members know how that story goes, so the insistence from the movie to hang that question mark in the air feels a little fruitless. Dylan does go electric, and most people know this. The name of the book upon which the screenplay is based is Dylan Goes Electric, for crying out loud, right? So I don't know. The movie really benefits from the fact that Dylan's music is essentially it's some of the best American poetry ever written. At the risk of sounding like I'm exaggerating, I truly believe that. The musical performances in the film also are terrific, and it's hard to make me grumpy about a movie I'm watching when tunes like Blowing in the Wind, or Girl from the North Country, or The Times They Are Changing, or Like a Rolling Stone are, coming at you one right after the other. I found myself, if I'm being honest, I found myself, tearing up several times during the film just because the lyricism of those tracks is so freaking phenomenal. Excuse me. See, I'm stumbling over my words just talking about it in retrospect. I do think this film is totally worth seeing, as it clearly, like I said earlier, will end up being a big awards contender this year. And I think fans and newcomers to Dylan's work will all find something to enjoy with it. I'm a moderate Dylan head. I don't know a ton of his lore. Not intimately, at least. So if you're a diehard out there with lots of negative thoughts and feelings about this movie, then please let me know why you think I might be wrong in regards to my opinions about this movie. I'm sure, for example, that there were historical liberties being taken. Like, I doubt that the night of the Cuban Missile Crisis is the first time that Bob Dylan and Joan Baez hooked up. There's no way that a, a lot of these events unfolded in such a quote unquote cinematic way, right? That's just kind of the nature of this kind of movie. But I did think that the movie generally worked pretty well on the whole. Um, and even with the main character not being very open to the audience in terms of emotionality, I think that the film still finds things to say about a certain restless mindset that craves reinvention, desires to defy categories. The film interrogates the ideas of self invention as a concept in ways that I was not really anticipating, frankly. And I also think that there's some interesting narrative meat to the idea that the Pete Seeger character, played by Edward Norton, is trying to cultivate this flame that is Dylan, while at the same time harboring some clear jealousy about not himself, I mean Seeger, being the, folk music messiah who makes it cool and makes it popular and makes it more widely respected and consumed. Um, Chalamet as Dylan is like yet another Lisan Al Gaib, to paraphrase Dune 2. So, like, between Wonka being the messiah of chocolate and Dylan being the messiah of folk music, and like Chalamet is just like cornering the market on this type of figure, I guess. But silliness aside, I kind of wish that the conflict between Pete Seeger and Bob Dylan had been brought more to the forefront of the film once or twice. But I get it, the movie is pretty lengthy as it is, and the subtext is certainly there. But there are a few times where the Edward Norton character does have some kind of conflicted feelings, clearly on his face, at least, because Edward Norton's a phenomenal actor. There are moments where he has these pangs of jealousy and resentment on his face that we never really, there's no explosion. And not that Pete Seeger is depicted as the kind of man who would ever have that kind of explosion, but at least some sort of direct statement of this contradiction within the film itself, I think would have been welcome, as far as like um, making things feel a little bit, just a tad more intellectually stimulating. Obviously, James Mangold is a very accomplished filmmaker. I'm not calling his movies dumb by any means. That's just a personal opinion that I myself had as I was sitting there and watching. Um, so, where does this film rank on my scale of A list, A amazing, A average, A abysmal, or needs to be A boarded? And like I say every time, I reserve the right to tweak the names of those rankings. But it's basically a 1 through 5 scale for my purposes here. I think on a number scale, or on my scale, of it would fall just short of 4 stars, right at a very strong 3.5. So for that reason, on my personal scale, I'll have to call it average as a rating. But with the note that the power of this Bob Dylan music in the film is just, it's freaking amazing. So that will certainly never fail to be true. Um, I saw this movie in IMAX and saved $17.49 with AMC A List. I saw this as a part of an experiment where I try to see as many movies with A List as I possibly can in a single year. Saving $17.49 was definitely worth it here. I have no complaints. I was happy that this got a limited IMAX release. I don't know if at the time of recording it's still in IMAX theaters across the country, but when I went to go see it, there were a few IMAX theaters near me that had maybe one screening per day of this movie. Depending on how it does, when Oscar nominations are announced, it may get another IMAX engagement, but I'm not really certain that that's going to be the case with things like Wolfman coming out and eating up. No pun intended, wolfing up, I guess, those premium screens. But what did you think of A Complete Unknown if you did see it? Tell me below. Tell me your favorite Bob Dylan song, your favorite musical biopic, or your favorite joke from Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, one of my favorite films of all time. Feel free to subscribe to the channel or like this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I hope the wrong kid doesn't die. Bye.